Hi, welcome to this little design talk on the challenge of a zero waste hat. So here's the challenge. Hats are not easy to do zero waste because the main classic hat shapes have curves which don't easily fit together, and there's the added complication of needing to make multiple sizes. Hats are never going to be zero waste in the same way garments are because the pieces are too small to fit across the width of the fabric. Instead, there are two strategies which can be used to make a hat zero waste. The first strategy is to design modular pattern pieces which are squares or rectangles. These can be easily moved around the fabric, and any offcuts are rectangles which are easy to use later on for something else. Modular doesn't mean the pieces can't have curves, as long as the curves are contained within the straight sides. This example shows a backpack where all the curved pieces are nested together to form a rectangle. The second strategy is to design tessellating pattern pieces which fit into themselves and can be marked out in multiples across the fabric. This works well if you're cutting a production run. In this example here, this pattern for maxi pads is designed to tessellate, and we're left with half shapes at the sides which could be seamed together to make holes. Here are some hats that I've designed in the past. This is a tie-on sun visor. The ties get around the issue of creating multiple sizes because it makes the hat adjustable. Here's what it looks like on. Tennis, anyone? The hat is cut from a semicircle left from a zero waste skirt. And by combining the two garments, the amount of waste is reduced when they're cut together. So the semicircle's like this, and then gets folded in half like this, a bit bigger, like that. Then we draw an imaginary line, and then there's a template for the visor which goes here, and that gets cut there, and that gets cut there. And so this is the visor. This unfolds to become the crown, and these are the ties. Here's another hat. This is a low waist cap. The original actually was zero waste. This is my first sample. Fortunately, I did it in khaki and my family thought I joined the People's Army. Here's what it looks like on. You can see the second prototype has got a wider visor, and I rounded off the corners. Sometimes you do need to make concessions in the name of aesthetics or fit or sewing ease. So here's what the pattern looks like. So the idea was to have the crown like this, and then this is the peak, the visor part, and then the side is actually a rectangle and shaped with darts. Normally the side of this cap would look like this, be a bit more curved, but I've shaped it with darts. Darts actually use less fabric than seams, but it means I can get a rectangle here, and then these were decoratively top stitched. So the new sample looked like this. I came out like this, and I went around like this, and then that left me with a small amount of waste here. But still, I was still miles ahead of a regular cap pattern in terms of fabric yield and how much waste. You can see that there are some issues to still resolve with this pattern because the inside doesn't look very nice at all. So either I could cut a lining for around the sides and then possibly bag out this seam, and that would look neat, or I could cut a lining and then I could put binding around this bias binding, and that would look quite nice too. So still a few issues to resolve, but I don't think they're impossible. This is my newest hat. It's a sun hat with less than 5% waste. Interestingly, the percentage of waste gets less the bigger the size, which is the opposite of conventional patterns. Normally bigger sizes create more waste. I chased this pattern for over a year before I nailed it, and I'm just going to show you some of the ideas that I tried before I got to this one. I tried a tessellating pattern which had the crown and brim combined, so the hat would look like this when it was worn, like it would have like this kind of hat. And sometimes you see this for infants' hats, and so the pattern pieces would go like this. They would tessellate into each other, and then when we got to the end we would have half pieces like this. So I don't know, there'd be like 6 of them or something. Anyway, didn't work. The verdict was you can't really get enough spread on the brim here. The brim sits over your face too much. So here's another idea I tried, where the whole hat is contained in a single rectangle or square. So this is the crown, this is the brim, and then the sides get cut off to make a round brim like this, and these bits get sewn together like this to create the sides of the hat. This didn't even make it past the paper stage, as I could see there would be issues with the sides of the crown and creating multiple sizes. I'm showing you these because maybe you can find a way to make these ideas work, if not for hats, for something else. Then I decided to start from a hat pattern I already had. This is a free bucket hat pattern on my website. If you want to try it, it's in the November 2017 archive. It comes in 5 sizes, and if you want to get started on sewing hats, this is a nice easy one. I recently put the hat pieces into my layout software, and the best layout I could get wasted 35% of the fabric. So the bucket hat has pattern pieces that look like this. There's an option for a round or an oval shaped crown. It's got 2 curved sides with side seams for the sides, and then the brim is in 2 parts, quite curvy like that. So you cut 4, cut 4, cut 2. So I started with the crown and I divided it into 6 like this, so I had 6 wedges. Then I drew the side of the crown in a big long strip like this, and I took all these wedges and I stuck them onto the sides like that, so each of these went here. And then as we came down here I put a dart here, so then the sides of my hat would curve. So this would work okay sewn together like this, but to make it more interesting I tessellated these wedges. So what I did was I took a section off here and I added it on here. So now they are curved and I have got a swirly curved seam. That you can see here, how it swirls out from the middle. So this could be untessellated just by drawing those lines back in. So then I just drew up like this. And this is the crown, and this is its lining. So this relies on the crown being cut with its lining in the same fabric because they nest together. I pretty much nailed the crown first go, but bear in mind that I thought about this for a whole year. The brim, on the other hand, took about 4 tries. The idea was to use trapeziums, the top and tail, with each other like this. So they would be cut like this. Whoops. And then they would be separated to form a brim that went like this. And so on. But my first brim looked a lot like a lampshade. Looked a bit like, it was a bit more like that. And these came out, which I quite liked, but it looked a bit, arty, but it touched the back of the shoulders when you wore the hat, which was really annoying. This is actually that brim, which I unpicked and used the crown for the next prototype. I can reuse this if I trim it back to this height, like bucket hat height, and then just bind the edges so it's not a complete waste. The trapeziums left corners here when they were sewn into a brim, but what I really wanted was a smooth flowing line, which on the first sample I did with sewing. I just rounded them off when I sewed and I left them in there, but in the name of easy sewing I curved them, and that's what accounts for the tiny percentage of waste. So the trapezium shapes are now like this. Then to match the curves on the crown, I tessellated the brim pieces too. So I took a piece off here and then I added it on like this. So they look like this, and they still tessellate with each other like this. Oops, like that. As with the crown, you could untessellate them by going like this. And just to say, at the end of each is a side piece like this, and these get seamed together to make a whole one. So they will look like this with a seam in the middle. And that's how the sides can be made straight, so we've got a modular rectangular piece to move around the fabric.